by decreasing increase in pay to participate.
Okay.
So the two things have to work together.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
So for me, I guess whatever parent, whoever brought this up, what do they want to accomplish? Is it the inconvenience of having to pay every time, or is it the cost? I mean, I don't. Somebody brought it up, right? So what was the concern?
I think it's the cost. Yeah, I think it's more the cost. I've heard from a lot of families. I have 4 boys, so they're all in sports, and just heard from a lot of families across the board that want to go watch nieces and nephews, and you know, it's so for me and my husband and our 2 young ones, it's $24. You know, at 3 or 4 games a week, you're talking almost $100 a week towards games. So I think it's more the cost. And I almost wonder too if it wouldn't help boost those that attend the sporting events and the different things.
I know, like, Amanda had posted in the group today, I think it was this morning, that you shared the agenda.
Yesterday.
Was it yesterday? And so a couple people were commenting how they, like that, just the cost, they want to go watch, but when they have kids of their own, you know, with their own activities or things like that, and then they want to go watch their niece or see their friends or whatever, you know, whatever it is, it just becomes an added cost that can seem like a lot, and it adds up over time.
What do we charge now, Jeff?
So
I'm sorry, you probably already said that.
That's okay. I want to go back to your last question before I answer that one. You asked if it would be home or like league type stuff.
It'd be home.
We can only offer
Yeah.
a home only pass.
Yeah.
We can't sell league passes for that. And then your question you just asked was how much are we charging?
Yeah.
So the league increased adult prices from $5 to $7 because it was becoming difficult to cover officials.
Sure.
Yep, so we added the $2 on. I've been an administrator now, this is year number 14, and so we haven't at any point during that time increased prices for adults. We have taken student price from $3 to $5, but again, our high school students get into high school events for free at home for that. But like if you're bringing younger kids, and obviously like you said, it's the $24 for 2 adults plus the 2 middle or elementary age kids and
I would say I can sympathize with that because I mean, we go to games and we can't leave the little ones at home, so we bring them with us, and then it's $25-$30 when we have 2 or 3 little ones with
And they
us.
sit on their iPads.
And then they sit on their iPads and watch, you know, and
sometimes they run around the commons.
I'm just saying, I mean, I can sympathize with that, so I could understand like a family pass maybe, I don't know, you know, to help parents with that issue of, you know, we're having to bring our kids. It's frustrating to pay $6-7 for a kid to not watch, but
Do you guys know what they charge now for the? I mean, I'm assuming a few of you are doing competitive stuff.
Oh,
what do they charge in the city now when we go to a competitive?
I just paid $40 for a weekend pass for each parent, and
$40 each.
$40
Yeah.
each. But that was at it's called Creekside, the new thing up off 45 Highway. Yeah.
The most recent tournaments we.
But it's $20 per person per day if you're just for the day. The weekend pass is $40.
Some of the more recent tournaments that we've been to since COVID has rolled all of that into like the team's entry fee.
The gate fee, yeah.
That's been that way for.
Yeah, they've tried to do that at 3 and 2 in those places, but yeah, Creekside and the new home field thing up off of the Legends or whatever is the same as Creekside now, and it's ridiculous. I mean, I say it's ridiculous, but remember a time when it didn't cost that much, I guess.
Could I add one other thing? I forgot to share with the information. So we looked sport by sport for last year to see how did we do for football only, basketball only, et cetera. So we were in the black in both football and basketball, but we were in the red in terms of paying officials and entry fees for every other activity. So
Football and basketball.
football and basketball were the only 2 we brought in more than we spent.
That's pretty much always right, Jeff. I mean, historically,
For
it's
sure. Yeah.
So the game receipts for those 2 sports really carry
the rest of
Yeah.
the sports, the deficit from the rest of the sports.
And we used to have the family passes, and they went away, right? What was the reason?
Yeah, honestly.
We didn't have them for very long, but we did have them.
Yeah, it's something that I inherited from Mark Lentz, and we would get 1 or 2 phone calls a year, and sometimes we wouldn't even get one. And as expenses kept creeping up, plus at that time, there was no interest in it, we stopped doing it.
Gotcha.
So, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't know where to start again on setting those prices.
Sure, I just remember we had it.
Yep, so a couple things, if you choose to move down the path of, in the future, adding passes, big decisions would be individual versus family. If you do choose to do family, define what a family unit is, because that would empower us to handle it correctly. It's going to put our gate workers in a really difficult spot when somebody comes up and says, well, they're in my family, and they don't meet the definition. So please be mindful of that, and then just figure out what the cost is.
What about, this one is really off the wall, but what about like a punch card that they can literally physically punch at the gate so that it's not getting passed around without getting repunched?
I mean, I can do that at Oklahoma Joe's for a free fee, man. Yeah, I don't know.
Just an idea.
Yeah, the other schools did the Go fan just because they felt like it was the fastest way to get people
Oh, okay.
through the
Oh, I guess
gate.
it kind of is.
I don't know what the technology requirement for that is either.
Just a phone, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just a phone.
I don't know what the ratio of like adults to students would be, but I mean, all the students are equipped with a card. They're like, staff has staff badges, the high school gets in with their ID. Would it be potentially possible to maybe say students with an ID could get in for free? Obviously, the parents, adults would then still pay. I think it would be a reduction to the household paying. I think it would be a good way to keep track of who's in the family. And if they don't have their ID, like the middle school and high school, if you don't have it, you're kind of out of luck, you just pay the price. You know what I mean?
So, hear what you're saying. So high school, 9 through 12, they get in no matter what for high school.
Right.
So you'd be talking if a Cottonwood kid came up with their
Right.
school issue ID
Right.
outside of Watts.
Are they coming up to the gate by themselves?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely no.
That happens, yeah.
But I mean, just so you're not, I mean, I think trying to figure out a pass is a lot of work, and I mean, it's doable, but is it in the best interest of, you know, all the things that you have in your line item to take care of? Maybe, maybe not. But I mean, they're already equipped with it. We already give it to them.
Darren and I had talked about, so back to your kind of punch card idea or whatever, we want it to be something substantial that can't be replicated. And so our league passes were getting duplicated at some schools. Like, you're allowed 50 league passes for your school, and there'd be 100 people come through, and we played, fill in the blank school, and call them out. So we switched to a hard plastic like credit card that we changed the design on every single year, and that solved that problem. It's pretty amazing.
So do you think that, I mean, just obviously we don't have all the information and all the data collected, but do you think, so you're thinking like the app would probably be the easiest way to go about doing that?
Darren was pretty insistent if we end up going this way in the future with any passes, 2 things. One, it'd be an individual, and 2, that it'd be the GoFam app. Just because that's how the other schools in the league have reported out. The family passes were a problem with defining the family unit, so that's why they went to the individual, but they tried to make the individual amounts add up to what a family amount would add up to. So you're accomplishing the same thing, saving the family unit the money. And then the other thing was speed for it being digital, and you couldn't pass it around. And I'll use an example, and yes, people will do this, but if my kid plays football and my neighbor's kid plays volleyball, I'm never going to volleyball and they're never coming to football, we can just swap the pass out, and so GoFam prevents that from happening. Credit card.
One thing I would be maybe in favor of, or something to look at, is I've never been a fan, this, of the kids having to pay, even when we have sub-state. I've never been a fan of that at all, that. I would be in favor of some kind of way to figure out where the kids don't have to pay if they have their ID, however that works, and maybe to offset that, the parents can pay a little bit more. Instead of it being 7, can we change that, or is that a league set fee?
It's a league thing.
So then if we had that passed, maybe we can figure it out. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the kids having to pay. I get that. But, you know.
You're gonna get more money out of me in the concession stand.
Exactly.
If I take my kids.
Well, that's what I feel like.
And I know that goes to a different place, but
And I'm gonna be
That's
more
where they're-
likely to come to the games if my kids were running the commons or on their iPads or.
Well, it feels frustrating. You used to pay $7 to get your kid in, and then he buys $10 worth of stuff at the concession stand while he's there because he's bored and doesn't watch. But you can't leave him out,
Seven
you
is
know.
set.
Um,
7 is set. We couldn't
We're
change
adults,
that.
it's just 5 for kids, 7 for adults. Yeah.
But if we did the league pass, maybe you could, well, I guess it really wouldn't matter.
So-
I want to know if you wouldn't get more parents to come if their kids with their student ID could get in.
Without their parents.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We put the events on for kids. That's why we do it. That's why we're all in the business. That's why you're sitting on the board. So I want to make sure that's not lost on anybody. I am a little worried what the supervision component could look like if we let everyone in for free, child-wise. And so, not that, could we have a policy of the only way you're getting in if you're younger than high school, you have to be with a parent? I mean, you could probably do that. It'd be hard. It'd be really difficult to put your gate workers in that position. But, you know, if 100 extra kids showed up, that's awesome for the atmosphere, but most elementary age students at a football game, for example, aren't sitting in the bleachers. They're in that.
We got their own game going on.
Yeah, which again, that's what makes small towns neat,
Right.
but I do worry
Right.
about what that could cost.
So you're more concerned about the younger kids on that end, right?
Middle school and down, for sure.
Middle school and down,
Yeah.
okay.
Being there unsupervised. even if
Well, I
it's free.
mean, for a couple of reasons. One, you socially aren't as mature yet. You don't know what's okay and what's not. But the other thing is, I don't have a relationship with the elementary age kids yet, so I just look like the grumpy dad. They don't know who I am or who Mr. Wright is for that matter. Most kids are respectful, but sometimes they're not.
I don't think it would be out of line to say that you can't enter for free without an adult. I mean, I don't, as a parent, I don't think that's
The issue.
out of line.
Yeah, but oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, there's two things. Number one, the issue, football's by far the worst. And for right or wrong, now that the practice field, north of the student parking lot is all fenced off, that gate gets open to where kids can go out there, because it was a losing battle as administrators to try to tell people, you need to go sit with your parent and so forth, and then the parent would come down and, I mean, would be verbal with us trying to keep kids safe. And so that's why because before, it used to be behind the stands and so forth. And so now it's out there, but it could be a liability because of kids and not having, so that is an issue and concern. So, I mean, that's one thing we've tried to, it's just been a losing battle. I mean, for that. So the other thing would be so high school and middle school, so high school kids get into the high school games with their student ID, middle school for middle school, but there is a fee, an activity fee that they pay at enrollment, so that is part of kind of what that activity fee goes to. If you were wanting to go down the path of elementary and so forth, I think you probably would have to look at that to create some, because just allowing it, you're gonna have, from just a revenue, not talking about right or wrong, just from a revenue, you're gonna have a revenue deficit. And so if you have a revenue deficit, and there's not enough to pay, so use ticket prices to get in, kind of like a user fee. And so you have the user fee that's paying for that part of the events versus the general fund or tax revenue. And so if we have a deficit, then you would be taking the tax revenue to make that up. To try to keep it to where it's a user fee, like even just flat, I think you would have to then charge K-5 an activity fee as well, knowing, and the dollar amount may be less, but knowing that you could potentially be charging kids that fee that may not ever attend, because that's how it would have to work out.
So, but that's an assumption based off of that the numbers would stay the same, right? Like, you don't think that attendance would increase if people could bring their students with them without charge?
I can't answer that, but I would, if I had to make I guess, I would say that I don't know that the amount would be very,
They're about 70.
that it would, I don't think so, but that's just I can't say an educated guess, maybe a hunch.
Something too, Jeff mentioned this, that the GoFam program, I mean, there are fees to that program. And back when I looked at it a few months ago, there was a convenience fee for that. So if a ticket's less than $10, they charge $1. If it's more than $10, that's $1 plus 5%. So again, there's a cost to that, so you're shifting revenue away from the gate to pay an outside company. So just keep that in mind if that's a solution you entertain. There's a cost to that.
That's one of the reasons we've avoided shifting like DeSoto did to an online deal, because we didn't want to pass a fee on to families coming to games or have to eat that out of our budget. So, Matt, you stumbled onto something like it being a revenue issue with expenses and whatnot, and how you balance those things out. One of the other things that I wanted to make note of is most of the other schools in the league, in fact, we may be the only one, we all use a program called Hubble, HUBL. It's an online filming deal. All of our sports use it now. We finally went to the whole school package. 90% of that is paid for through fundraising dollars. So when our kids are selling Ace cards and all these different things, a huge percentage of that money is coming back out of the coaches' team accounts to pay our Hubble subscription every year. It's a little over $10,000 a year. And I'll be honest, if you don't have Huddle, you will athletically get left behind everybody else. It is that much of an advantage. It's just the way the games have evolved. So, but again, our coaches are fundraising that, and that's another reason we feel like we've been barely in the black with our gate revenues. Because we're not even that.
The app, would you just use it for the passes, or would you have to use it for general admission as well?
We would propose, in talking to Darren, that we only use it for the passes, because if we don't, then either we're going to have to use a convenience fee or pass it on to families.
Right.
And we want to avoid that.
And the convenience fee isn't a percentage, or it is a percentage?
So like Jimmy said, once you exceed $10, it is $1 plus 5%. That's why I was struggling to come up with that number on family
Based
passes.
off of, yeah.
So if you sold a $100 individual pass, just using a random number, it costs $106.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So we're happy to investigate or what have you, but that's the historical piece of it. And there's a lot of moving parts and unknowns, if you will. And I think with anything, an ideal situation would be to try to stay revenue neutral and save families money. But knowing that, to stay revenue neutral and say, that means you need to sell more, get more people in there based off that, and that would be and that's an unknown.
Is there any more discussion on this matter, or does the board want to do anything more with this evening?
I think it's definitely something worth looking into. I agree with you. I like the idea of the kids getting in free. I don't like the idea of, obviously, the free babysitting, just loosening the kids.
They would have to come in with a paid adult. If you got 2 adults, then somehow you're gonna. But I get your point.
Yeah.
You
I
don't
can
want to,
understand both sides of it too, I think.
It's- I watch it on Friday night, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I see it firsthand.
Yeah.
So what do we want to have done? Do we want to have more research? And talk
I would like
about
to see
it?
more, yeah, I would like to.
What information and what research would be?
As far as the app, and then, as far as individual versus family passes, what that would look like, how many home games we have, how are things.
You'd have to adjust that every year then based on the home games, right? To make it come out right.
Yes. If you come up with a percentage and say, we're going to give a 20% discount for a pass, or whatever the number is, I just threw one out there. You adjust the number down.
Are you asking just for high school or middle school also?
I think it'd be interesting to know both. I mean, just to have to have the information. I don't know, if I as a paying customer were to go to every single game available to me, like what would that cost me? I've not ever done the math. But like what would that cost me, and then, what would it cost a family on average that is a 2 adult, 2 kid family? I know that that's probably a far outlier for a lot of our families, but like what is that average cost if I wanted to go to every game available to have those numbers? And then what does a 15% discount? What does a 20%? What do those look like as far as an individual pass? At least to have a starting place of, what are.
So are you thinking like combined or like a high school pass and then a middle school pass?
I think both. Like what would it?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think if you want to go down this path, I think you have to, and I don't want to speak for them, I think you have to have separate passes. Because when you have a combined one, then it's how do you divide
Right.
money up, and because this is what happens.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't mean
so
having them
I think
as
that-
one pass, but having the information for both, for
Because
the
then
parents
there's
to
the
we-
go.
option to buy both.
Right.
So here's what happened. We're all consumers, right? So I'm gonna look at my situation, and I'm gonna look and say, okay, here's the cost of the pass.
Right.
X dollars. Well, if I know that that's more than what it's gonna cost me to go in individually,
Right.
then I'm not buying it. And if it's a good deal, then I am. So, I know I'm stating the
Well, and I know
obvious
that it
here,
could
but
also potentially be sports specific, if I have a kid who plays basketball, but I don't have somebody who plays football,
the
that's.
problem you're getting into with that is then you're putting your gate people in a really tough, because this is what happens, is someone will say, well, I have a pass, and then the communication doesn't get there, and then they're upset when you say, well, that pass isn't good, because we have it happen from like, visiting schools will show a pass, and they'll think that they bought it for all schools, and our gate people do.
Our gate workers get abused. There's no.
And then it's,
Absolutely, they do, yes, they do. They do.
So middle schoolers have student ID and can get into middle school games,
Yeah.
but not high school games.
Correct.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's vice versa for high school kids too. They get into high school events for free, but not ours for free. We've always let our middle school kids in
And
for free.
we asked across the league, and I think there's probably about 30% of us that let our kids in for free. The rest all charge their kids.
I forgot to share that.
Yeah.
And we just switched a couple years ago. Our gate used to be 3 for adults and 2 for students. It was that way forever, and we just recently just increased that to $5 across the board. So.
yeah.
And it's only for adults and school-age children. Like if you bring an infant, we don't charge. And then obviously we accept the golden age passes, which I'm sure you've already talked about.
How'd you gotta be for that?
Okay, so we will get some more info on that and revisit this. Do we need to do anything formal? Okay. Okay, moving on to the Klassmeyer drainage request, and that's Matt again.
Yeah, so we can start discussion. I'd really like to, and the reason I put it based off the last meeting, Sean, and asking for it to be on here, but I think it's probably best when we go to Hillsdale and we have our special meeting. Part of that is going to be a tour and so forth. I can actually take you out to the back and so forth. I think there's a couple things based off the request. We're not interested in selling Hillsdale School. It's being utilized and for much needed reasons. So that was one of his proposals. One of them was to sell a piece of ground just to the south of Dollar General so he can put a retention pond there. That's taking the best piece of property. A recommendation for me would be, we're not interested in selling that because once you sell it, you don't have it. We're not growing right now, we know that, but we don't know what the future is going to hold. And so that is ours, it works. And that's probably if we were to wanting to add or expand something, that's the best piece right there because of the parking lot and so forth. But his proposal said so he could put a retention pond there. I don't know how he would get from that location to just the south side without having some kind of an easement or whatever, and then you're back to the first one for the
There's also
easement.
some Kansas laws that prohibit you from selling the building without legislative approval, so it's a complicated process.
Correct. It would, yeah, exactly. But then, the other one for the easement, I guess it comes down to philosophy and philosophical pieces. The building was put on that piece of property. The gutters drain onto it, and that's where I want to show you this and so forth. I think it's an issue that has to be fixed regardless of this zoning piece, because I know as a landowner and farm, I can't just divert water onto my neighbor and so forth. I do think there's some maybe some solutions that they may not have thought about. To put a retention pond in the front part of it. I know part of it's cost, but I think there's some other things. I visited with and met with Mr. Zoller on 2 different occasions. And so, to access, like they have a propane tank on the backside of that property behind the building. To access it, they've taken down a section of fence that continues to stay down, and then they access it from our back lot. And put the propane tank in and out, and I think fill it from there, so that which could be a safety concern, and so forth. So I've asked him if it was possible to put the fence back up, to fix some trees over and so forth, and that has not happened yet. And so that's where there's a little bit of frustration. To allow an easement could be a possibility. I think the philosophical piece of that is, does the board want to allow that? And knowing that if there's, like right now, because of it being the gutter, there's leaves at the end of it that's clogged up. And so because of the trees and so forth, if the gutter gets clogged, it clogs that up, then that becomes an potential ongoing issue that we have as a district, while the current landowner sells and walks away, and then it's our issue. So I think seeing it and talking to them will be more, but those are kind of some of my initial thoughts or conversations with Mr. Zoller when I met with him. Initially with Mr. Chris Schrader when he was still here out at the site, and then I visited with Mr. Zoller a second time.
The only reason I asked to put it on, I just sounded like there was probably more to the story.
Absolutely.
And didn't know, like
No.
I said, and I don't know, and me may know this. I mean, I assume that if they would have to pay us an easement fee of some kind, wouldn't they? As part of the negotiation, if we were to allow them to have an easement of some kind, are we allowed to charge that? And I'm just asking because we're a public entity, are we able to do that or not, or?
Yes. But I think you have to be careful on
I figured there was some
profiting
sort of
to an
stipulation.
extent being a public.
That's what I
piece,
want. Yeah, I didn't know how that would work. I figured there was probably regulations, but I wasn't aware of it.
How long have we had that building, original still?
Hillsdale, it was built in
And it's been part of the district since built?
early.
It was
The
part of
original
the,
part
it was part of the consolidation in 67,
I think.
1967, but it was 1920, 1953, yeah.
So,
I feel like it was before that, though.
right now we have, it's our special ed co-op programs. I think right now we have about 65 or 70 that are out there for the different programs. I know all of our classrooms are being utilized, and then that's where our school sites and our parents as teachers have stuff, so, yeah. It's a real good, it's been able to allow us as a co-op to expand and some offerings that we had some capacity issues with prior. But I
Seeing
think,
it's definitely gonna help.
I think going out there and seeing it and so forth and
Right,
talking
I
to her,
think
so,
that's perfect.
and I can, you know, kind of show you some stuff.
I don't want to take up much time with it.
No, that's,
Yeah.
but I want to give you a little bit of background.
That's what I-
So you have that, so you
asking
can kind of maybe, you know, start formulating some questions or thoughts, and then
Yeah.
that way we can get out there.
I figured there was probably more to it. than
Sure,
just the-
absolutely.
It was built in 1957.
57.
Good to know. Okay, moving on, we'll talk about busing for less than the 2.5 miles here in Neola, and that's Matt and Jimmy.
So this comes up every year at the beginning of the school year. You know, concerns because of lack of busing less in-town kids or less than 2.5 miles and sidewalks and so forth. I did have, in the past, we had some options in the community that we could refer to. Jimmy has done a really good job of trying to help families problem solve and have actually tried to help connect to, you know, families to carpool or work things out together. But we had the taxi. That was an option that is no longer. And then we also had where the trolley had a service, and they had a bus that they had that service, and that's no longer available this year. There are a couple individuals that have vans that have picked up or will pick up for a fee and so forth. So based off that, knowing that, you know, sometimes it is hard, I mean, we get that, and Jimmy and I met with the bus company to find out, you know, are there options and so the info sheet that's included are just some kind of very general, you know, kind of what our current policy is, some paid ridership, what other districts cost or charge for less than 2.5 miles. And then some questions and so forth. But according to Kansas Central, we have 4 bus routes that come in town that could add a stop in town to pick kids up. 4 routes, roughly, and I don't know that it's exactly the same, but we'll say 2,500 seats available. So basically 25 per stop. That could be doable. Other buses have capacity, but if we add, like if we're taking other routes and having a stop in town, then we're altering that route, which means that we're going to be altering the pickup and drop-off times of our county kids, country kids. So that's doable, but that's changing something. If, and as Jimmy has told you before, if the school collects and does this on our own, we cannot charge free students. We have, you know, roughly not quite 40% of our kids that qualify for free lunch, and so it's what, mid-30s. We don't have the official number right now, but you take that, so then we would not have enough capacity for free seats on the bus, and then this solution doesn't work. If we stay out of it, and we have the bus company take care of this for us, I mean, we would help, you know, come up with the plan, but they would run it, then everybody would be on the same playing field, and so it would be whatever that cost would be determined, regardless of free, reduced, or you know, full paid lunch status. So that would be that could be an option if you could have up to 100 seats. This solution could work if there was only 1 kid, or up to 100 kids. If it's more than 100 that would be interested, then we would have to determine, you know, changing the routes or the drop-off pickup times, and how would you deal with that? What is not financially feasible at all is just adding, saying, hey, we want to add a city route. That's not financially feasible. I mean, when you do the math, it doesn't work. Jimmy, I would let you add anything that you want.
Well, I would just say, so it's stated here publicly, because the information I shared in my board report about, you know, the cost for the bus route, because a lot of times I think people don't realize how expensive the transportation is. So currently, a bus route costs $291.24 per day, not including bus fuel. So we have 175 school days a year, so a bus costs $50,967. That's for the bus and the driver. Now, if sometimes we have bus aides on routes, that's an additional cost. It's $87.65 a day. Or if they're on there for the whole year on that route, that's another $15,338. And then the fuel. So our bus contract does not cover fuel. We pay that ourselves. If your contractor provides the fuel, they're going to price that high enough to account for market fluctuations. So this way, we get the good and the bad. We pay the high and the low, but there's no markup per se. Where if they locked it in for the term of the contract, they're going to have to hedge high to account for unforeseen price increases. So bus fuel last year, we spent around $81,508, and that's for about 15 regular routes, so roughly $5,400 per route. That's a hard number to come up with because fuel prices change all the time, and routes change from year to year on their distance. But again, so you can add those things up. So just the bus, $50,967 if there's a bus monitor, another $15,000, fuel's another $5,000. So, and again, as Matt said, if we administered a program, we couldn't charge free and reduced lunch. So you take about 40% of the kids off. So take those costs and divide it by, what an average bus seats, which I think is around 70 kids. You see where that can add up in a hurry to a cost. Sometimes when people hear that figure, they think that's exorbitant. There's not a profit in there. It's covering the cost. Now the company has a profit built in. Obviously, they're a for-profit business, unlike the school district. But anyway, that's the hard numbers for the cost.
Has the company done something similar for other school districts?
They have.
Do they do the cards? Just because I was reading their questions,
So,
set cards, or are they?
They've done different things in different places. In our conversation with them, they said the hardest part is how do you monitor, police it, if you will. Could it be a card system or what? Because this isn't picking up like in the country, and then we pick up at the front of your house, right? Unless you're like in a development, like if you're out by the lake, they don't always go and pick up in front of they'll pick at the end of the street. In town, it would be an intersection. It would be, hey, you're gonna have to still walk maybe 2 or 3 blocks, 4 blocks to get to this pickup point. So it's how do you monitor that only the people that are paying are riding versus just bringing everybody, that shows up. And so they said they have not, as a company, found out a really good way to do that. I mean, usually, maybe the first time they'll pick them up but then there's a phone call and say, hey, this is what's going on, how do you monitor? But they did say, but correct me if I'm misspeaking, Jimmy, in my conversation with them, they're like, that is the hardest part. That you can have a card. Once the drivers know and it's established, then it's easier because they're like, okay, I know you are not.
Has attendance changed much since this rule was implemented?
Oh, for other schools?
I don't know, since like before when you could pick up in school or in town versus not in town.
Has our attendance changed?
Has it dropped at all where students are going to school?
I have not seen that
Okay.
from historically, no.
And the city busing, as we refer to, it was eliminated with the start of the 2011-12 school year. So actually, there's not a kid in the district that was in school back when that was available.
Thanks for making me feel old.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Don't want to date anyone.
There were parents, because you and I had that conversation.
Yeah, so, I
You
mean.
may have been in school then.
So I want to give you because this does come up every year.
Right.
But we had some, we still have some solutions because we do have a couple local people that have do have a van, and we've referred them to them. One of them was full, but we gave them the name of the other one, and so to my knowledge, the questions that came my way was just the one at the beginning of this year. Not saying that there's not other,
Right.
what have you. but-
Honestly, I like it, the idea of having the bus company handle it and still being able to pick up some extra kids in town because it's a way to work out to the box and still get the children to school. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents that'd be happy because that way they can get to work a little earlier or their morning's a little less chaotic. And I've heard from a lot of parents that they want it, but, yeah.
And historically, when way back, when the board had to make that tough decision, we did ask that as a district at the time, and there wasn't enough interest at the time to make it work. But I believe that doing this, at least for the first 100 spots, and to be honest with you, I don't
think it will go around.
my guess would be, it would be probably enough, because people have listed. I mean, people have
Right.
listed. But I also know that there are places that there is no way to walk. I mean,
Right.
if where the individual spoke last meeting, Rockwood, she's right, there's no sidewalks. I mean, you're walking in there.
2.5 miles.
Yeah, yeah.
So in your opinion, the most feasible way to make it happen is to let the bus barn kind of handle it?
It would be to work through the bus company, trying to set up a system with, and a fee structure that we can agree on. That would, because we're paying for the route.
Right.
So that route's costing us regardless. So that fee would then try to help offset some of those costs. And so now they're gonna have a cost with administering the program, so we'd have to work that part of it out. But that can be done. I mean, that part can be done. The other piece that I did put, right, wrong, and different, historically, I don't have the rationale, but our out-of-district families right now can ride a bus if they meet at a established stop. And so I think if we were to look at making this an option, I think that we would have to look at, if you want to ride the bus, then you're going to have to pay.
Do we know how many families are out of district that take advantage of that? Pop quiz.
We
I
probably know
don't
that more on the
exactly.
enrollment side than the busing side. I don't know off the top of my head.
I would have to
Yeah, that'd be
find
interesting.
out.
I'd be curious to know.
There's a few.
Yeah.
There's
Because
there's three that are on my road.
Yeah, right, right.
But the point is, there's no funding for out of district, just like there's no funding for less than 2.5
Right.
miles. So
Right.
it would probably need to apply to both groups.
Agreed. The chart that you have in here, can you explain obviously the far right column is pretty self-explanatory, but the first two columns.
That's just so I went on an internet search for the district. So for instance, Lewisburg charges $300 a year for a kid but it's a $450 a year family night. So like if they have two students, then they would pay $450 instead of the $600.
Okay.
So that's how.
I was just trying to figure out
yeah.
what the two columns were.
That's like if it's one, and then if there's a cap, or there's another
Okay.
piece. And it's not all this, because not all of them are the same. So like Tonganoxie, has a $200 semester, but a $400 semester cap. So I'm assuming that's for like a family.
Okay.
And then because they do it, administer that themselves, then they have a reduced cost for reduced family,
Gotcha.
and then free lunch part. And then Blue Valley is something totally different. So you can't really compare one to the other.
Sure.
It's just information.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there's interest, I mean, we can continue to work with the bus company, trying to come up with, a potential solution. This isn't something, I mean, at best case scenario, maybe second semester for in town if they want. Or I say in town, less than 2.5
Right,
miles.
sure.
I think it's worth venturing into and trying to find out if we can make it work.
I agree. I think there's enough interest.
Well, I think if there's not the options there used to be in town, and so
Yeah, and that's really kind
that's
of
what's
what's
the problem
changed.
is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Jimmy, I mean, I got a completely different take on this a little bit. I think we should have in-town busing. I think it's important, and I think whether I have a kid or not, I think it's my responsibility, even as a taxpayer, for the kids to have in-town busing, and not even be discussing all the other stuff. So I know it would be a substantial amount of money, but I think it's something we should really look at. I mean, I think it's important to have the in-town busing, and I think it's part of it, it's part of it. I mean, yeah, I get the tax thing, I get it all, but I feel it's our responsibility as adults.
Jimmy and I had this conversation years ago when they first did away with it, and I guess, I don't know, I mean, that's the way it always was. I wonder if, would we see more students from other towns if it was something that we provided that other towns in the state are? Would we see more students come to Paylor if it was something that we provided?
Oh, that more people would move to town if you had in-town busing.
I'm just asking. It's just a question that I thought about today.
If we had the houses.
Well, I know that's a whole nother concept. I didn't want to open the whole can of worms,
But either way,
it's just a question that I thought
whether
of.
we do or not, I feel like as a person in the school district, my kids are done, they're gone, I think that's our responsibility, everybody's.
No, that's actually what I was asking. I reached out to Jimmy right after last time to see how the formula is, like what the process is and what the statute is that has changed to create that, because I think that would also be great to change on the state side.
Well, either way, I just think it's something we should do.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot, maybe we can figure for the next cycle how much that is per mill levy.
Well, we can,
mill levy, whatever.
as we work through this, I mean, we can come up with because it would be adding in-town routes, right, at the cost, and determine how many added buses would need to be added to.
Sure.
And we have historically,
I was gonna say, do
when it
you
was
have a
cut, how
historical?
many routes
We
we
know
cut.
back.
We've looked at it a couple of times, man, we keep talking about it, we keep spending lots of times trying to,
Absolutely.
in a way, reinvent the wheel, or come up with outside the box thinking, when at the end of the day, it'd be nice if we could do it.
I'd be curious to know
I think
how.
the community should support it.
I'd be curious how attendance would improve
They could, yeah.
ultimately.
Hey, even if it helps get 10 more kids to school, our attendance is not, with the little kids is not, I don't know if that's part of it, but I think like I said, I'll say it again, I think as a community, it's our responsibility to figure out how to make that happen. Everybody, whether they have a kid or not.
I'll just share 2 points along that line, because that's why I share those numbers, because back in the day, you figure up what it is, $50,000, $70,000 a bus times however many buses, that's the cost, once we know the capacity and things. But, so as Samantha and I visited previously, that the state statute defines the funding, and that's the state laws, 2.5 miles and above is what we're funded. Several years ago, there was a little bit of movement to lower that down 1/2 mile every year. I think the goal was to get it to 1 mile. It didn't end up passing, and it never went anywhere. But obviously, if that changed at the state level, every district, including Paylor, would get funded differently. And if we were funded for it, we would certainly be able to offer. That would be a huge factor. The other thing, just interesting trivia, is how the state budget coding works on the budget program and how we have to code expenses. Transportation is not considered instructional or function 1000 expenditure. So when you hear about, the state and others saying we want you to spend it on the classroom, they don't consider busing as part of the classroom. So it's not function 1000 classroom instructional expenditure. So for whatever trivia that's worth.
Good to know. Okay, thank you. All right, and we have no open forum this evening, so we'll move on to action items. First, we need to approve the Board of Education policy GAOE update, and Matt's gonna talk to us about that.
This is getting our policy in line with updated state statute regarding work comp. So this is making sure that we're in compliance.
Yeah. It's been like a 12-year struggle to get that changed.
Yeah, so,
More better towards work.
yeah, this is, I mean, some of the stuff, I mean, we work, our work comp, you know, carriers, you know, we work through, you know, they follow current statute and stuff too, but this is truly getting our policy in line with the changes.
I had one question with one line, just because I don't know if I'm reading it right. An employee using paid leave in combination with workers' compensation will be charged for one full or partial day of paid leave as provided in the applicable leave policy. So they have to pay for it? Or am I just like reading it weird?
I read it as they would just use it.
Okay, that's
not
It would come out of the
Okay.
bank of paid leave.
okay. Just double check.
Yeah.
Didn't want to.
These hours.
I was also reading it during conversation, so.
So I would recommend approval to be in line with statute.
A motion to approve it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the BOE policy GAOE update. All of those in favor? Okay, great. And lastly, approve curriculum resources from National Agricultural Institute, $2,876, and Cengage Learning for $5,055.75.
Yeah, so I met with both teachers, Mr. Scholl and Mr. Menifee, and I believe Mr. Menifee had even talked with the FFA alumni and things and talking about the horticulture book. It's a thick book that has a lot of identification, and so that was the one that he sent me. CTE courses are a little different. They don't have like a state standards. They work off of competencies, and so those kind of lay out how they go. So when you're working with singleton classes or one or two teachers who are doing the same thing, it's easier to work and go through that because you're not dealing with like a curriculum committee of a K-12 or a K-5 and then a 6-8 and then a 9-12 to get a core subject or to be adopted. So working with them, they found these, Mr. Scholl got the samples in and looked at those, and actually they sent another one, and Mr. Menifee looked at it also, and for the agribusiness, and thought that it was really good. It matches exactly what he needs to teach in a manner in which he does teach it. It comes with all the resources, and the Cengage, the horticulture, that is also, those are a little bit more expensive, but they're a upper level, so they move towards like higher level, high school, college. So those are the purchases that they asked for and reviewed. So that's why we're bringing it to you tonight.
When was the last time they had books?
Oh, I
in the
don't
classroom?
even want to
Okay.
tell you. It's been a long time. So sometimes they make up their own curriculum and stay with that. But getting resources and things, it's easy now to have that. Sometimes if you teach it and you've done it, but now expanding with those competencies and going bigger. Plus finding stuff, like finding resources for like the ag that would teach like the specifics. Like when I went over and was looking with Mr. Scholl, he was talking about stuff I don't understand, and about all the kinds of cattle and things, and he's like, it's just right here. Where you might look at when we do like a reading or math, we have like several textbooks to look at, and then we kind of gauge what meets our standards the best, and then you can match it up to that, where they don't necessarily have a lot of choices out there for their topics.
Right.
So,
There was also, I think, a little confusion. I think they thought that they were gonna have to pay for those themselves out of their own money, and so there was and I was like, no, I don't think that's how that works. I'm almost certain that's not how that works, but I'll ask and make sure.
Yes, so, when I went over and met with them, and we had a good discussion, but, this really, Mr. Menifee thought that, this one was like the best that, for the horticulture, and it's like identification, things that they didn't currently have.
And I think he said it was one that would serve for multiple years.
Yes.
Like it would get
Yeah.
them a distance down the road.
Right, it's like the newest edition
Yeah.
out there, so, yeah. And then there's like online teacher resources and things like that for it, so, yeah, I just ask that you approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve curriculum resources from National Agricultural Institute for $2,876 and Cengage Learning for $5,055.75. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and is there a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
My second.
All those in favor to adjourn? Great, thank you, everybody.
It's a long day, bro.
It's so nice.